Welcome everyone to my webinar. Can you hear me, Tom?
I can hear you very well. Thanks, Jen.
Fantastic. So my name's Jen Compton, author of Life's a Mango, and this evening I would like to extend a very warm welcome to a fellow poet, Tom Stodulka. Tom has recently published a beautiful book of poems called Storm Clouds and Silver Linings, and of course I have a copy right here, and it's called Storm Clouds and Silver Linings, My Journey. It's about life, it's about love, work and nature, and it's my great pleasure to have Tom here on this webinar. Good evening, Tom, and welcome.
Good evening to you, Jen, as well, and thank you very much for having me on your webinar. And I'd like to get you to read one of your poems to start the ball rolling today, Jen. Your website is www.jencompton.com, and I've recently had the pleasure of listening to your poems and absolutely love them. Perhaps I wonder if you wouldn't mind reading Thank You, ABC.
I'm glad you asked me to recite that one, Tom, because I think I've got about 54 poems in my book, but I only know about 20 off by heart. So you're in luck. I do know Thank You, ABC off by heart. So
that is wonderful.
I would love to recite it because I think it's very in keeping with the tone of your book as well, because it's all about gratitude and making this life as precious as we know it is. So here it is. Thank you, ABC. A is for air, allows me to breathe. B is for breath that comes with such ease. C is for creating the joy you have found. D is for daybreak, a bird's chirping sound. E is for the earth on which our feet tread. F is for food, thanks for our daily bread. G is for gratitude, give thanks for this day. H is for the heart that allows us to pray. I is for I am, the essence within. J is for joy, this life we've been given. K is for knowing that all will be well. L is for learning, in this moment we dwell. M is for memories of where we can go to. N is for nature, her stillness in you. O is for others, all beings on earth. P is for practice, each day a new birth. Q is for questions to learn and to grow. R is for resources that allow life to flow. S is for senses, connect to everything. T is for time, to each day go within. U is for union with all that we see. V is for vision of where we will be. W is for water that keeps us alive. X is for xylitol, which is sweet, saves the hive. Y is for you, whom I value so much. Z is for zestful, for each life that we touch.
That's absolutely wonderful, Jen, and very inspiring for every one of us. Thank you so much. And for young people as well in particular, I think there are so many things in there that we can learn from that inspiration. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Tom. I'd like our listeners this evening to get to know you a bit better, as well as to get to know your poetry. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, can you tell me, what's your philosophy of life? What makes Tom tick? What makes you want to get up in the morning?
I think it's captured in some of the words you used, such as gratitude for being alive each day, especially as we get older. And you know, there are challenges in getting older, and obviously I'm surrounded by people who are experiencing that as well. And I think I'm very fortunate that I've still got the capacity and a skill of mediation, that I can work with people who are in stress and crisis, and it gives me a lot of joy working with people, catching up with people, and now with the poetry, connecting with a lot of people who love reading my poems. And it sounds a bit full of myself, but to get positive feedback about whether I do mediation work or whether I write poems, getting that beautiful feedback from people is very, very special and a real privilege. So getting up in the morning, I've often got a mediation to do, either in the morning or the afternoon, or sometimes all day. And I also teach a lot of new mediation students. And in between, I've got the benefit of enjoying nature and writing poetry and being grateful to be alive and grateful to work with beautiful people. Thank you very much, Jen.
Tom, on the first page of your book, you have a list of endorsements, and there's one from a man called Ron, and I'd like to read what he says. He says, I've read your 62 pages bringing forth great feelings of love of country, empathy, nostalgia, and faith in the indomitable human spirit. The lines on your 96-year-old mother brought tears to my eyes. Your father's paintings are just beautiful. So, Tom, I was wondering if you would please share with us the poem about your mother, Darkness in the Light.
I've written a few about my mum, and she's now already 95, but this one was written on the 4th of August 2017, and it's called Darkness in Light. My old mum, hanging by a thread at 93, always philosophizing and rationalizing, playing her part. Life is a stage, for some so long, even into one's 90s. For too many, taken too early, cut down like a strong tree. The Irwins, the Brocks, the Leakes, the Bowies and the Williamses of this world. Great people, high achievers, and the world mourns them greatly, maybe even remembered for a few weeks. As life demands, we move on. Don't dwell too much. Time is precious. For my mother, almost 94, how much is there to live for? It is not always a happy time, but life is ever so precious. You hang on till the bitter end. Death is too great an unknown, and most of us are ill prepared. Most of us are terrified of the darkness beyond light. Even night offers some light, but death shows us none. It is the terrible fear of the unknown, darkness way beyond night.
Tom, if you had just one day, if you knew you had one more day left on earth, how would you live it?
I think I'd spend it with family. I'd probably, if I was up at the Sunshine Coast where I reside some of the time, I'd probably do much the same as I do when I'm up there. I might do a bit of gardening. I might catch up with a friend or two for a coffee. And then I'd just walk around the property with my family and maybe pick a few pieces of fruit, some citrus or some passion fruits. Maybe there's a guava that looks like it's ready to be eaten and not too full of a million seeds. But I think I'd be enjoying nature and trying to see the positive and hopefully feel ready for another world.
Tom, you and I both studied at the University of Sydney, and we both have a legal background, funnily enough, and something else we have in common. You as a lawyer and me as a personal legal secretary. And both of us have worked in the CBD in Sydney. We've also both seen, I guess, that cities remind us of that saying that all that glitters is not gold. So because we have this in common, I'd like to share your poem Echoes of Central Station on page 49 of your book.
Great, thank you, Jen.
Echoes of Central Station, Sydney. It's only early, the city awakes, the cars rushing this way and that. The early morning commuters already scurrying from the station, rushing to grab a quick coffee. Huddled to keep warm on another wintry and Antarctic day, the remnants of autumn, the yellow leaves still hanging by a thread, blown this way and that before the final descent onto the pavement. Buildings still mostly in darkness, another cold night, too many homeless in an otherwise wealthy city. On the surface, it looks well managed and even groomed. The students seem content and in their own world, chatting and fixed in their social media bubble, fully absorbed, and often not a care in the world. Even the down and outs have their own routine, some confidently begging for a gold coin donation, others feeling too ashamed. Nearby, churches and towers of Queen Victoria's vintage and more recent landmarks survive proudly. Though challenged and surrounded by modern steel, glass and concrete blocks, these too have a place to accommodate a bigger, bolder, and for some a brighter future. For the others, it is not a better world, though everyone seeks a happier future, jobs, a lotto win, a happy relationship, and sadly for too many, just a warm bed and some food to manage their hunger. Our Prime Minister says it's an exciting time. Fortunately for many, yes, but for others, sadly, they will be left behind in the never-ending rush of those scurrying and the cars rushing on a cold Sydney July morning. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and the people who influenced you most as a child?
In a funny sort of way, it was quite seamless, despite all the issues that were going on around us as refugees and not having a car, not having a television, living off boxes, fruit boxes that my dad turned into some sort of rough furniture. And Dad was also an artist, and there are some of Dad's paintings in the book. And so Dad had several jobs, and Mum worked as well, and our grandmother from Germany came out to help, and she was a wonderful asset. And I'd be part of the cottage industries that we used to run at home. There are several, including growing cacti and succulents. My father was sort of probably ahead of his time in many ways. And with that determination from my parents for us to have a good education, as I say, there was a lot happening, and we just all had our particular tasks and our role, and mine was to help around the house and make sure that things ticked over while Mum and Dad were working hard, and my grandmother would do several jobs around the countryside. She'd hop on a train to different parts of New South Wales to do a range of jobs, including nursing and cleaning jobs, and quite tough for the whole family. And despite that, because education was so important, we were sent to a good school and managed to cope somehow, despite the pressures and the stress. And it was a real privilege to have parents who had such a passion for their children assimilating and doing and trying to get an education. And in those days, assimilation was probably a far bigger issue. And trying to, within the assimilation, where did the culture fit in? And that there was a place for that as well, because you can't dismiss those aspects of your past. We had English as a second language. I grew up speaking German to a great extent, and I think that's why sometimes writing assignments and essays was extremely difficult, and I didn't really have such a good grasp of English in those early years. And it seems funny that I've been able to write some poems now since 1976, and just sort of built up the confidence over the years. So there's a lot of stories there. Joining the Navy in my mid-20s and travelling around Australia, seeing and around the world. Joined the Navy to see the world, as they say, and that's certainly what it was for me. It was an exciting time to be part of the Navy in the 70s, 80s and 90s, and funnily enough, it was my Navy work that eventually took me into mediation in the 90s, and there's a whole story around that, but we've only got so much time today,
Tom,
unfortunately.
You've written some poems about a place called Wonalla. Can you tell us where that is and then read us that poem, The Heart of Wonalla, on page 59?
Absolutely. With my work nowadays in Queensland as a mediator, I travel around southeast Queensland in particular and to other parts of Australia, and sometimes I work in Toowoomba. And there's a bed and breakfast I stay at up there called Winola, and it's run by Stephen and Margaret, and they're very hospitable. And it's part of the what they call the Caledonian Estate. It's this old, beautiful old Queenslander with the Aboriginal name Winola. Winola originally is from Victoria. It's a name that was taken on at this old home in East Toowoomba, not far from Queen's Park. And many people would know about Queen's Park, especially once a year with the Carnival of Flowers. And Toowoomba is transposed into a very special place during that time of the year. It's a special place. It's like an oasis. And for me, Winola, the bed and breakfast where I stay sometimes, is like an oasis. And I think when I read the poem called Heart of Winola, written on the 1st of April 2015, you'll see how Winola is that same oasis that Toowoomba is in that part of the world. It's a hub of education and nature and beautiful trees and generally a wonderful city. It is so quiet, peaceful and beautiful. The garden is still in full bloom, despite the touch of autumn and a cool breeze. The chimes are sounding forth and heralding a new day. The clouds are not visible as all is grey and bringing a hint of much needed and always welcome rain. An oasis, a hint of temperate climes from another land so long ago. England in an Australian setting where eucalypt and rose, silky oak and daffodil, grevillea and camellia can all flourish together, as mostly all people from distant lands allow each other a space to share, to live and let live. The mist is starting to blow in from the range. The cockatoos are conversing loudly, enjoying whatever the weather may bring them on this rainy morn. A vine with purple flowers hangs loosely and flutters in the breeze, stroking each breath of air like a feather on soft skin, gently caressing before winter will soon bring on a harsher cloak. And it's funny, it's the 1st of April and now we're in mid-May, so heading towards winter, and places like Toowoomba or places along the range have that extra chill at the moment, which Brisbane doesn't quite have till later on in the year.
Tom, it's just been an absolute joy and a pleasure to have shared some time with you this evening, and I hope that our listeners feel that they have not only got to know your poetry but also got to know you, the person, a bit better this evening. Tom, can you tell us where we can find you on social media and also how we can get a copy of your book?
Absolutely. I'm on Facebook, and that's something which provides enormous exposure, I've found, and I've been very much encouraged to do the whole Facebook scene through Ocean Reef Publishing, and I'm grateful to Ocean and his assistant, and it's tomstodulkaauthor.com, www.tomstodulkaauthor.com. The surname is a bit tricky.
Stodulka. That's
it, Jen. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom, and I wish you all the best with your book. Oh, by the way, do you have an audio book?
There's an audio book and an e-book, and it's all out there. It's just amazing, isn't it? That exposure one can, the extent to which one can go across the globe and receive even beautiful comments from around the world. It's something very special and very exciting, and it inspires me to write the next book, which I'm not that far off.
Oh, wow.
I just have to think of a title. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening.
Good evening. Bye for now. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.